one of my videos, the dragon video, passed 650 views. So that's pretty epic. Hello there, I'm Simon. Welcome to my channel. We need to talk. Yeah, this is gonna be a little more serious. We need to talk about Black Pete. Very quick introduction, because I'm not sure what you know about this. Here in Belgium and some other countries in Europe, we have an annual gift bringing tradition called Sinterklaas. It's pretty much exactly Santa Claus, except it's earlier. It's on December 6th, so depending on when this video comes out, it's either just passed or it's about to. In fact, Santa Claus is most likely probably just downright based on this guy. Anyway, the problem with this is that the main side character to Saint Nick, the gift bringer is called Saint Nicholas or Sinterklaas. I haven't actually said that yet, have I? Is a guy called Black Pete or Zwarte Piet. In fact, these days he's pretty much the only side character, unless you count a horse. And most people do count a horse. And actually I kinda wanna count Bart too. But I think you probably know what the problem here is. Black Pete is now considered by many to be racist. It's a leftover from our colonial past, and we gotta knock it off. So yeah, now I have to talk about racism. Now, before I do, I want to preface that I'm just a guy on the internet. A white guy at that. So I'm about as privileged as it gets in a topic like this. I'm not gonna have the final answer to this. It's not up to me to make a call here. But I do have a couple of thoughts about this. And there are a couple of arguments that I can't believe are still being used. So, is Black Pete racist? It's a little too complicated to really give a yes or no answer to. But if you insist, I'm gonna have to say yes. I mean, he's a black guy serving a white guy with a beard. It's not very subtle, is it? Now, 3 years ago at this point, a channel called History with Hilbert made a video about how it may not have been originally racist. And even though I'm not entirely convinced, it's still an interesting watch. And I do recommend it. I'll leave a link down there. Here's the thing. I'm not sure it matters all that much. Because whatever it was originally, what we ended up with is a black man serving a white guy, which is undeniably problematic. Also, if one of your arguments is that Pete may be inspired by Odin's ravens, because they're also black, I'm gonna be skeptical. But please do go watch for yourself. Be nice. So, the big argument made by people saying it's not racist is that Pete isn't actually black. No, they say, he's actually a white guy, but he becomes black because of the soot. He goes through the chimney, and the soot inside makes him black. A couple of problems with that. Firstly, how does that explain the hair and the lips? I guess he might just happen to look like that, but it's very coincidental that every depiction of Pete ever just happens to have those two traits that happen to be associated with the caricature of a black person, don't you think? Also, his colorful clothes seem to be completely resistant to the soot. Okay, I guess that Nick's holy magic is responsible for that, but he might have made Pete soot resistant entirely, instead of just his clothes. Kinda shows where his priorities are. The thing is, this is not the Saint Nick that I know. Because this implies that Nick, every year after the round of gifts, would go, "Hey Pete, good job tonight. Let's go home." What? Nah, no need to shower. We're gonna be doing this again next year anyway. Might as well keep it on. And that is not the Saint Nick that I know. The Nick that I know would insist on Pete having a shower, and wouldn't go anywhere with him until he's all the way clean. Also, doesn't this kind of imply that black people just have a bad sense of hygiene? How is this a good argument? In fact, more than not helping the case for the defense, it actively makes it worse. But I'll get back to that. One of the big things that Hilbert also talks about is that the idea of Black Pete doesn't actually enforce racism in kids. In fact, he says that even in 1859, Pete was already as popular as Nick himself, and even today, kids don't associate him with racist themes. Pete is seen as a nice guy, and I can attest to this myself. I never saw him as a dumb or inferior person in any way. I thought he was a cool dude. In fact, I would even say that he's by far the awesomest guy in the entire Sinterklaas lore. So I'm not gonna say that this isn't true. But then don't insist that he isn't actually black. What's happening here is they're taking the one awesome guy in the lore and they're making him white. That's called whitewashing. What makes you think that's better? This is not better than Pete just being a black guy. It's arguably even worse. So let's just stop pretending he's white, shall we? But even then, even if Pete is an awesome black guy, he's not unproblematic. You could say that he's a black guy serving a white guy, which is a little too reminiscent of slavery. In fact, I just said exactly that at the beginning of this video. But that's not even it, because I never actually saw him as a servant, even though, admittedly, he's literally called that. Like, that's literally his job description, but I never saw him as that. I always saw him as a nice younger dude helping out this old guy in need. So I'm not saying that's not problematic or racist, but it doesn't have to be, is all I'm saying. The problem, as I'm seeing it at least, is that he's a caricature. This is basically blackface, which is connected to, and in that sense, a visual representation of, every stereotype and archetype that white people used to have of black people, which is mostly bad. They were seen as inferior, savage, violent, and dumb. And these caricatures perpetuate those ideas. Of course, I'm a white guy, so I don't know what people of color think when they see this. But I don't think it's surprising if they feel like this reminds them of those hurtful stereotypes and say, hey, not cool. Let's not do this anymore. But when this topic comes up, too many people usually react something like this. This is our tradition, shut up! As if that's an automatic free pass or something. Now, don't get me wrong, I like all traditions, but it's not enough of an argument to do things if the tradition in question is problematic. It's like saying, sorry, it's tradition here to burn blonde people at the stake, and you have to respect that. The stakes are right this way. One of the first posts I ever shared on Facebook was about an experiment they did with monkeys. Now, I don't actually know if this is an experiment that ever actually happened, but it doesn't really matter. It's just a good illustration. Basically, they had 5 monkeys in a cage and a ladder with some bananas at the top. And every time one of them went up there, they would all be drenched in water. And so it became a tradition to just beat up anyone who tried to go up there. And then they started switching monkeys for new ones, one by one, until there were 5 new monkeys in the cage, who still had the tradition to beat up anyone who tried to go up the ladder, even though they would have had no idea why, because they had never been drenched themselves. Now, I don't know what you take away from that story, but here's my take on it. Just because something is a tradition doesn't mean it's good or right, or that it makes sense, or that it should keep happening. So please, just stop using that as an argument, because it's not good enough. So, is Black Pete racist? Well, I think it's problematic enough to at least rethink what the Hades were doing. If you ask me, and it's my bleeping channel, so I'm just assuming you are, the big thing we have to do is talk. It's literally the name of the show. Let's talk. And equally important, listen. don't just yell about your own point of view. We know you're convinced of your own point of view. That's why you're defending it. But please try to also see things from the other's point of view. Talk to them. Listen to them. And this goes both ways. If you feel that Pete is racist, try to also see how people could be convinced that he's not. And vice versa, if you do not think he's racist, try to see why people might think he is. And give it a fair chance. You might just be convinced. And that's not a bad thing. Maybe there's a way to satisfy both. And that's really all I have to say about this. Please let me know down below what you think. Just be nice. And just like that, I've seamlessly arrived at the YouTube thing. You know the drill, people. There's also the like button and dislike button down below. Please share the video all over the interwebs. Is that a thing anyone actually says, unironically? Anyway, usually my videos are a lot nerdier than this one, so please consider going to my channel to check those out. And if you like what you see, please subscribe and ring that bell. You can find that link to Hilbert's video down below, as well as my social pages. That said, if you made it this far, thanks for watching.